Let's move on to the movie that really did it all. Batman Begins, which came out in 2005. And Chris Nolan actually is the first Batman director to actually tell Batman's origin story on film. Mm-hmm. And he also helped shape the genre of superhero films in general with this movie and TV shows. You know, I mean, Spider-Man, yes, was instrumental as well, but like Nolan brought this sense of realism and putting these heroes in the real world, what it would really be like, in this like gritty, dark take on it, which obviously, yes, influenced Marvel, not the darkness, but the realism. Yeah. And then DC has taken the realism and darkness with pretty much everything they've done. Yeah. And they've taken that Nolan approach. And
this movie solidified Nolan as a new voice in the action genre. And it was such a stark contrast because the last Batman movie that came out was Batman and Robin. And so his film was a polar opposite to that. And everything you hated about that movie, he turned on its head and made you love about this movie. This movie became a definitive version of Batman for so many people because it was kind of ruined by Schumacher. Keaton did a great job and Tim Burton, but Nolan really brought Batman into a believable sphere where you felt like it was a real character with authentic actions and personality traits within a real world that you could believe was true.
What I love about this film is the way he made it is it's just an origin story.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole movie, again, it's about how Bruce Wayne becomes Batman and how, as a damaged youth and a damaged kid, how he becomes Batman.
Yeah.
And it's
emotionally and physically.
Yeah, and when I watched Joker and I was doing notes for this movie, I realized this movie is basically Joker. Yeah. Joker, the one with Joaquin Phoenix, is basically the opposite of this movie.
Yeah.
And what I love about it is the opening of the movie has no titles.
Yeah.
Because Batman has not become Batman yet. The opening is just that really eerie, the Hans Zimmer score, and then the bats and the orange in this.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the movie, Bruce Wayne finally becomes Batman, and when the movie cuts to black, it says Batman Begins.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an open-ended, just one simple story. Yeah. Which, yes, they wanted, sequels were up in the air. They weren't sure if they were going to do sequels.
But obviously, yeah, they put that Joker card at the end of it. But like, they weren't planning like, oh, this is going to be a huge hit. We're definitely going to make another one. They didn't know what would happen with it.
Yeah, so I just love the huge confidence of Chris Nolan to be like, I'm not putting the title at the beginning of this movie.
Yeah.
It doesn't deserve to be at the beginning of the movie. Putting the title at the end of the movie.
And also, you don't see Batman as Batman until, what, an hour and a half into it?
Something like that. Yeah. I mean, even like when he's got the tumbler and he's saving Rachel, that's the first time he's suited up and he's doing some action in the city, like big time. But then he doesn't really fully become that hero until he defeats Ra's al Ghul. Yeah. And he's fighting Ra's al Ghul.
And it was just so great to watch how not only does he become the new version of Bruce Wayne, but how he becomes Batman. Whereas, how does he get his suit? Where does that come from? How does Batman build his suit? Where does Batman get his Batmobile? How does he get his cave? Like, everything is explained in this amazing, unique fashion where you can see not just the origin of Batman, but like how physically he creates this character in the real world, and you believe it 100%.
Especially like how he would need help, especially like obviously
who would help him? What kind of people can help him?
Yeah. But then Morgan Freeman as Lucius Fox is awesome, and it's like, oh, this is actually believable. I can believe like there's this really smart guy that works at Wayne Enterprises.
Yeah, it's the R&D department. So and obviously they have all this technology and this equipment and gear. So it makes sense that that's how he would build his suit and build all his gadgets.
Yeah, and when I love how Nolan addresses like, what if someone found out about this stuff later on in Dark Knight?
Yeah.
And so, I love how you really learn realistically how someone could become Batman.
Yeah, and my favorite part about the movie, and it obviously there are storylines in the comic books, whereas Batman is not just a superhero, he's a ninja. He's trained by a force of ninjas in the art of martial arts and deception, and it's just fascinating to watch a superhero movie where from the first act of the movie, he's training with ninjas in Asia. It's incredible. Like, that was the last thing you could have expected in a movie like this. And it makes sense to how Batman is physically and how he fights and how he's able to avoid detection. And it's a perfect character trait and backstory to the character.
Yeah, and something cool about the fighting in this movie is Nolan introduced a new form of martial arts, which you really hadn't seen on camera. Usually action movies just punches and kicks and stuff like that. But he introduced this Spanish fighting method called a Kaisi fighting method, where the person in the fight is using basically every part of their body to defend against themselves and use as weapons. So that's why like there's this great brawl of Batman fighting all the people with
At the drug deal.
at the drug deal.
Yeah.
And he's just using every part of his body, going in circles.
Yeah.
And then when he's
Fighting Ra's al Ghul's guards.
when he's fighting Ra's al Ghul's guards. So it's cool to see like a new style of fighting that you haven't really seen before, that exists in the world but you haven't seen before.
Yeah.
Used by a superhero.
Yeah. And Bale's physicality in this movie was incredible. And it's this great story because before he shot this, he filmed The Machinist, where he dropped down to, I think, 110 pounds. And he was a skeleton in that movie.
And before Machinist, American Psycho.
Yeah. So he did American Psycho, The Machinist. And so he actually auditioned with that Machinist weight. And so he was incredibly skinny and gaunt. And Nolan had to ask him, can you get up to weight for this movie? We need you to get over 200 pounds. And Bale's like, yeah, I can do it. And then he did end up getting well above what they wanted. And he actually showed up to set for Batman Begins overweight. Because what he did was he got jacked, but he was also eating as much food as he could. So he actually put on a lot of fat, too. So the crew was calling him Fat Man. So he had to drop 20 pounds of fat before they filmed his shirtless scenes. So he put on too much weight for it.
So then he had to cut.
Yeah, then he had to cut.
Like in a month.
Yeah.
To film.
And he said, I can do it. Don't worry.
But this movie has so many great actors and so many great characters. Like you're introduced to Cillian Murphy as Scarecrow, which is one of the best parts of the film.
Yeah.
And Cillian almost got Bruce Wayne Batman. He read for it, and he even dressed in wardrobe and did test shoots with it. But I love that Chris decided to put him in the film just as another character.
Yeah.
And he plays a really good villain.
And there's this funny thing where Nolan says